once again. So right now we're going to begin our cohort analysis, and to do that, first let's have another look at our data frame. Okay, there you go. And you will notice on the data frame that on the invoice dates column, we have both the dates and the time inputs in that column. And actually, what we really need for this particular analysis is just the year and the month. We don't even need the day section, and we don't need the time either. So all we need to do is we can create a function that would loop through this entire column and give us just the subsection that we actually need for analysis. To do that, let's write a function. We can call it get depth, gets month, and with one input. And the function would return, remember the DT, the datetime package we imported earlier, datetime extra the year. All right, so it's as simple as that. This function will take in an input value, which should be the column we want to perform the action on, and it will return just the year component and the month component, and we can simply just call the day component 1, so every day component will become 1. It doesn't matter, we don't need this component. What we need is the month, which we are going to be classifying every cohort in, and what we need also is a year to know the particular year that cohort belongs to, if it's 2011 or 2010 or 2012, just like that. So to apply this function to our data frame column, write data invoice dates, which is the invoice date we're trying to apply to, equals to data and we use the dot apply method and put in the function there. All right, now we can have another look at our data frame and see if anything has changed. Now you notice on the invoice date now, all the day, we converted all the day component to 1, so it's the first day of the month, and now it no longer has the time component, all it has is the month and the year. With this now, we can begin our cohort analysis and create our cohort index. But before we create our cohort index, there's one more thing we have to do. What we have currently on the invoice date is the date for every purchase. So right now we can create a new column, which would be the invoice, the cohort date. And we'll create the column such that every unique customer ID would have a cohort date, and the cohort date will be the first day they made their first, the month they made their first purchase. So to do that, let's write a new function called gets cohort dates, open brackets, data. We can impute our data frame can be the inputs in this function. Data brackets, cohort dates, which is the new column we want to create. Group by. Customer ID should be in capital letter, so we don't have an error. I'll explain shortly. All right. So what I just did here is I'm creating a function that is going to generate a new column on our data frame, on our original data frame, okay? And I'm going to call that new column cohort date. Now, this new column is going to contain the first day every customer made, the day every customer made their first purchase, not just the month and the year. So it's going to loop through customer ID and group every unique customer ID. And from those customer ID, I'm going to be picking up the invoice dates, and not just the invoice dates, I'm picking the minimum dates for every customer ID. Now, the minimum date represents the first day they made their purchase. Now, for every customer ID on this data frame, if you go through it, you notice that when one customer ID appears multiple times, they made a, let's say they made their first purchase on the 1st of September and their next purchase was on the 5th of September. Now, grouping that customer ID into one row, I can pick the minimum dates he made among all the dates, which would be the 1st of September. And that date will represent the day he or she made their first purchase. Now, that's a new column we are trying to create here. So our function now will return data. The new column we just created, cohort date. When we're done creating it, you will have a look and see what I'm trying to do here. Now, to apply the function, data cohort dates is now equal to gets cohort dates, of course. Apply it to what data. Run and let's have a look. Now you will see for every unique customer ID we have here, this is the first day they made, he or she made his first purchase. Now look over here at the bottom here. You will notice that this is actually a unique customer ID. So this is one particular customer. And the first day, this is the last day the customer made a purchase, which was 2011 December. And the first time, the first month this customer made a purchase was 8, which is August of 2011. So now you can see that we've successfully created a new column that carries the first month they made their purchase. Now we can group them by this first month they made their purchase to create the cohorts for each and every unique customer. Now, the next thing on our agenda is to create the cohort index. Now, we already have a column that represents the first month each customer made his or her first purchase. Now, what we need is a cohort index. And what the cohort index means is, a cohort index is just a numerical value that would represent the time distance between when they made their first purchase and when their next purchase is. Now, what I mean is, if on a customer, for a particular customer, there is a cohort index or a particular purchase or a particular data point, there is a cohort index of 2. What it means is 2 months after the first purchase. Now, if the cohort index is 5, it will mean 5 months. It will mean that particular purchase or that particular data was entered 5 months after the first purchase. So you see, the cohort index is what's going to tell us how far away was from the first purchase is this current purchase. That's basically what the cohort index implies. So let's go on and create cohort index. All right. Good. So what we need first is a function that can extract both the month and the year component from both our invoice date and the cohort date. So that way we can calculate what's the time distance between each. So this one already represents, this cohort date already represents the first month. So to know, for example now, to know the cohort index for this particular data entry, it will be the difference in months between 8 and 12. That will tell us exactly how months away from the first purchase is this current purchase. That's what it means. So we need a function that can get year and month components from our data and column. All right. So the month would be equal to data bracket colon dot dt, our dt library, and extract the month component, and our year would be equal to data colon dot dt dot year. Then we want to return, we don't need the day component of whatever date that transaction was made. All we need is the year, since year and month. That is basically the scope of this project. You can carry out on your own, you can carry out a cohort analysis that would analyze using the day component, but for this sake, it's not really needed. We've already written our function, so what we want to do now is apply the function to get, for every data point, the first month and the first year. So remember, where are we going to get the first month and the first year from? Remember that the cohort date only contains the first day a customer made a purchase. So that's where we can actually get the first month and first year from. So we can apply our function we created. Get here month, get here, and months, of course. Apply our data frame, and the column we are applying it to is cohort dates. Okay. And if we run this, get here and month is not defined. Let's see. Oh, we made an error here. Do of we get, we want that, we want this. I think I was the one who made the error here. Get year and month. Yeah. All right. So we can have a look of our first month for every data entry. Now, this tells us the first month every customer made their first purchase. Now, this is the 8th month, which is August, 12th month, which was December. But now we have the months. So what about the year for all of them as well? You can also see that first year. Good. So now we see that the first month was 12 and the year was 2010. First month was 8 and the year was 2011. All right, now we have our first year and first month. What we need right now is the latest, which is the current month for every data entry. For instance, when was this transaction made? Is the latest, when this transaction was made, was the latest month, which is the current month. When this transaction was made, was the latest month, which is the current month. So we already have the first year for this customer. For every unique ID, customer ID, we have the first year and month component. Now we need the latest, which is the current at that point. So all we have to do is apply it. We've already written our function. We've already written our function. So all we need is the latest month, latest year equal to year and month. Now I'm sure you're already guessing the column we're going to apply this to is the invoice date, because the invoice date is what carries the current date for every transaction, and the cohort date carries the first date for that customer. You get it? So let's run this and see. Awesome. Latest month. Let's look at what we have. So you see this transaction was made on the 12th month, and the latest year was good. So now to calculate our cohort index, what we need what we need is the time span between that current transaction and when the first transaction was made. Okay. All right. Let's go on to create our cohort index. To make our code neat, we can just create another dates function, user-defined function. Create cohort index. Sorry. Create cohort index, and our inputs, we want to input the first month, first year, latest month, latest year. And what we want this function to do is, when we input the first year and the first month and the latest month and the latest year, we want it to calculate the time difference in months actually, between when the customer made his first purchase to when the customer is making this current purchase. Good. So to do that, it's quite easy. We need to know the year difference first. The year difference would be the difference between the latest year and the first year. Of course, the latest year has to be greater than the first year, so it's reasonable to write it. Index. No, sorry. Month difference would be the latest month and the first month. Good. And now our index, which will represent our cohort index, will be the year difference times 12, because we want it to be in months. We want the cohort index to be in months. That is the difference between the time difference to be in months plus month difference. Consistent. Now, as you can see, if the year difference is 1, that would mean 12 months ago. So we are converting the year difference to months, and we'll add it to wherever month we already have from our months difference. So if it was 1 year and 2 months, it should be 12 plus 2, which is 14 months ago. You understand that? Now, this is going to give us a bit of a problem, especially for customers who only made purchase once. So those customers that made purchase once, there won't be any month difference. The month difference will be 0 and the year difference will be 0. So we don't want to have a cohort of 0 index. The customer made a purchase and we want to recognize that, oh yeah, this customer made a purchase just 1 month. And for that sake, we'll have to add +1, so that the index for customers that made their purchase just once would be 1. Okay. And then return index. Good. So our function is set. All we have to do now is apply it to our data frame and create a new column for the outputs that we'll get from our user-defined function. So cohort index is now equal to create cohort index. We'll apply it to, of course, our first month, first year, latest month, and latest year. All right. Awesome. Now we can visualize it and see. Good. So we've successfully been able to create our cohort index and our cohort date. Now, as you can see, this transaction has a cohort index of 5, which means this customer, this particular customer made a purchase, this particular purchase 5 months after his or her first purchase. So as you can see, the cohort index tells us how many months away from the first purchase is this particular purchase. That's what the cohort index implies. And this is what we are going to use to create our pivot table and our cohort table, and we'll be able to visualize it and have a good understanding. The cohort table is going to be a very beautiful visualization of the retention rates and how the customer has been active, like I showed you earlier in this. Well, see you in the next section where we'll dive deeper into creating our cohort table.